Okay, so we're going to look at the Mailchimp GDPR setting, and specifically why I don't use it. Now, just having this, a lot of people, because GDPR is quite complicated, it's open to interpretation. A lot of people really don't understand GDPR. Now, I'm no expert in GDPR. I don't claim to be. There's so much conflicting advice that I've had that and from multiple professionals as well who state different things, and they both state that they are GDPR practitioners and teachers, and they teach people how to be GDPR compliant, and yet they give conflicting information. And their argument is that they're a trained GDPR practitioner, and that they're both giving different information. It's a nightmare, basically. GDPR. It's a pain in the ass, and I wish we didn't have to deal with it, but we can't get away from it. It's the rules. It's if you're going to market to people in Europe, it's a GDPR regulation that you need to adhere to. Now, just talking about GDPR, while I'm no expert, what I do believe is that if you are attempting to comply with the GDPR rules and regulations, and you can demonstrate that you're trying to do that if you ever were to be investigated by the ICO, now, what's the likelihood of an ICO coming after a small company when there's millions of us around for making a small mistake? It's very minimum. But if they do come after you for any reason, if somebody reports to the ICO something about you and they do investigate you, as long as you're attempting to comply to the rules and regulations, then you're not going to find yourself in any serious hot bother at all. It's mainly there for data protection from big companies that are collecting a lot of information about us, such as our name. Things like airline companies are collecting a lot of information, so they get our name, address, our passport information. A lot of information that you don't really just want to give to everyday people. So if there's a data breach, that's where the ICO come in and investigate as to why there's a data breach or something not complying with GDPR. Okay, so nevertheless, we are subject to these laws and we need to comply to them. Now, Mailchimp gives us this GDPR setting. I'll show you where that is. In fact, we've already shown you, but we'll go back to it. Audience. And we'll go down to audience settings, name and defaults, and we've got this enable GDPR fields here. So we can turn that on and save. And most people do that and they think they now have a GDPR compliant form. That's not the case. If we refresh our basic sign up form, you can see what gets added to it. We now have this marketing permissions section. All this highlighted in blue is the GDPR settings. Now, just having this turned on does not make us GDPR compliant at all. You've got to know how you can contact people. And the default settings for this is, it gives us marketing permissions. Please select all the ways that you would like to hear from your business. And it gives us email, direct mail, and customized online advertising. A bit of information about you could unsubscribe anytime. And please visit our website for information about our privacy practices. And then it has some information about we use Mailchimp to learn more about Mailchimp's privacy practices too, because information will be stored in Mailchimp that is relevant to the people who are subscribing. Now, like I say, just having this form doesn't make you GDPR compliant, because people can actually sign up and not select any of these, sign up, and then they're on your list, but they've not given permission for you to email them. They've not given permission for you to direct mail them, and they've not given you permission to customize online advertise to them, which is things like Facebook ads and targeting them using a pixel. So what really can you do with them? Not really. Now, people would probably email them anyway, in which case they are not being GDPR compliant. So the intention of this is for you to have a basic understanding of some GDPR rules, and then you can set up this to ask people's permission in order to send them your services. So you can set it up, and if we go back to the form builder, if we go back to the sign up forms, as you can see, we've now got this box popped up saying GDPR fields are enabled for this list. Edit these fields in the form builder with a handy link. We can click on that, and we go back into the form builder, and we can see it's here. If we click on it, and we get the settings for the GDPR fields on the right hand side. So we can change things like marketing permissions, we can change the wording, we can change the description, we can change the options, we can get rid of some. And we can add options as well. And we can at least select that somebody requires at least one option to be selected for marketing permissions. But again, if you just left these two options and people select direct mail only, and you don't really deal with direct mail, then again, you've got no way of really contacting them. If you're not collecting their address and they select direct mail as the only way of contacting them, then you've got no way of contacting them at all. You're not collecting an address, so you can't post to them, and they're not giving you email permissions. So it's a bit confusing, this form. It's a bit difficult to understand, and you do really need to know about GDPR principles in order to set this form up effectively. Now, some of the GDPR principles, in order to use this form, you can, go and study the ICO website. But really, what I like to do is have everything in like a privacy policy where everything's in one place that is saying all the terms and conditions of use for the website, for signing up for email addresses, what I'm going to do with the email address, and blah, blah, blah. I like to have it all in a privacy policy, and you do need to have a privacy policy on your website. So if we go over and have a look at this website called iubender.com, this is a very handy website to go to. What you can do is you can actually generate free privacy policy forms for you to use in your website. And one of these ones is a GDPR compliant privacy policy. And it actually gives you some information on the complete solution to comply with the GDPR. So, quickly running over some of the requirements. Privacy and cookie policy. So websites are required to provide a privacy policy and a cookie policy. So that's one rule. We need to have, where we've got that there. Privacy and cookie policy, we need to have that. Policies are invalid if they're missing the right information, which is why we use one of these iubender templates. It's got all the information that we need. So the solution is the privacy and cookie policy generator in there. Okay. Cookie notice and prior blocking. Websites need to comply with the e-privacy directive, which what's it say? So we need to provide a cookie policy, display a cookie banner. So these are all related to your website, but when we're in Mailchimp, if we are using a landing page, we need to use a notification bar to say that we are tracking using cookies, and we'll go over that when we do set up landing pages for the first time. We need to acquire consent for using cookie policies. Again, we'll go over that. And proof of consent. So yeah, what we need to do as well, when people sign up for our forms, they need to give us proof of consent that they've agreed for us to email them, which is what this is about. Marketing permissions. By somebody clicking email, they're given proof of consent. But like we say, it doesn't really work if people don't click that. We can't email them, and yet they're on our email list. It's almost ridiculous. Okay, so it does state that we need to keep records, store and keep records of how we store and use data and collect them from users. So this is compliant by giving us this link to the Mailchimp privacy practices. So it tells people about how data is stored and protected. So that's why that's in there. So it's worth definitely mentioning in your privacy policy about using Mailchimp and having that exact link in your privacy policy to the Mailchimp policy as well. It's letting people know how you store and retain data. So yeah, there's some other things that we need to know as well. So we need to be transparent with how we're going to use data, so what we're going to use data for. Now that doesn't really mention anything about that, but we need to be clear with information anyway. That would actually be in your privacy policy about what data is used for. You know, if you are selling data, then you have to put it in your privacy policy, and people have to accept that that their data is going to be sold to a third party. Now, that's generally not a good thing to do. Never, ever, ever sell data to another person. But you have to be transparent about what you're going to use the data for. So if you're going to use it to market to people, then state in your privacy policy that we may contact you from time to time with information that's relevant, that we consider is relevant to you about our products and our services. So basically, you're saying that we think, or you think that your products and services are going to be of use in some way or other to your subscriber. So you are going to send them information on products or services. So we need to be transparent with what we use data for. Data that we collect has to be relevant to services. So as we kind of went over when we're building the form, we consider all the information that we need to offer people a service or a product or something. And at that time, we need to collect data that's relevant. So if you're sending out a free ebook, a digital delivered ebook via email, you don't need somebody's address. You don't need somebody's phone number. You know, that's irrelevant data that you're collecting, and you should not be collecting that data. Obviously, if you're sending out a physical book, then yes, you need to collect that data. Positive action. So when we create, when somebody signs up, they have to do what's called positive action to sign up. So this marketing permissions box. You know, these are not pre-selected, so when the page loads, these are not selected by default, and then people do not want to be marketed to, then they can uncheck it. We used to do that years ago before GDPR. You used to see that in forms where you would have boxes that were ticked already, so if you forgot to untick them, then basically you were opting in to those marketing permissions. Now it's changed. People have to take a positive action, so they have to actually click to agree, which is what this is doing as well. It's giving them an area where they are clicking, they are taking a positive action in order to give you approval to contact them. Okay. Easy unsubscribe. Well, that's quite simple. Mailchimp's done this for years. They've always done this. In the footer of every email that goes out, in the footer is an unsubscribe link. It's just a really simple unsubscribe link, and people will go through the process of being able to unsubscribe via that link. Okay, so we've discussed about having a privacy and cookie policy on your website. That is something that is needed, and the default text that comes in Mailchimp, you know, it says, for more information about our privacy practices, please visit our website. So in your website somewhere, you should have a privacy policy available. Okay, some of the other things you need to put in as just for information. It's not really relevant to the GDPR settings, but it's just for your information. In your privacy and cookie policy, you will be asked who the data manager is, and if you're a solo entrepreneur, if it's just you and your business, then you are the data manager. You're the person that's responsible for people's data. You're the person that people can contact to find out what data you hold on them, and you have to provide that information within the GDPR laws, and you have to let people know who to contact. So that is going to be you or somebody allocated for your business to be the data manager. And yes, and if somebody asks for data, that you need to know how to send them data that you hold on them. whether it's data that you have in Mailchimp or whether it's data that you have elsewhere on your website or any other platforms that you're storing information on. You need to be able to get that data and send it to the people and let them know what data you have. So when we do look at Mailchimp, the data that we have on people, if we go to our audience and view our contacts, we can click on the contact themselves and it will give us a page with all different information about that person. So we know name, we know when they subscribed, we've got information on them here, so address, phone number, website we haven't got. GDPR opted in is not relevant because we've only just turned this on. It gives us some information about the language that it's used, and it gives them some information about activity that's been happening. So there's not really much held on this person. This is me, but you may have more information about your subscribers, especially when you connect to a store. You might get their address, their phone number. You might get information on products they've bought. You'll see all the information that they've opened there. So you can use this to sort of gather information on what you've got on people in Mailchimp. Okay, so that's sort of some basic GDPR regulations and rules that we need to comply to. And the idea of having the Mailchimp setting and form is to try and is to comply to a lot of those rules and regulations. However, it's not pretty. It's long, unless you know how to set it up to meet your needs for your business and to be GDPR compliant. Just turning that on doesn't make you GDPR compliant. So I don't actually use this. One reason is because it's long and ugly and it looks very, very, very official. And another reason is, well, basically, it's confusing. I don't really know how I'd want to set this up for my business. I'd much rather have something much, much simpler. And that's what we're going to go over in the next video, is how to be GDPR compliant without actually using this GDPR setting.